Hey, this is Trey Gowdy. Thank you for joining us today. So far, I think we've agreed fairness is a foundational attribute necessary to live in the kind of society we aspire to live in. We've also looked at the negative side. We looked at what happens when someone is treated unfairly, unjustly, disparately. And I took great pains to say either real or perceived unfairness. And I did that because everyone who perceives a slight is not objectively right about it. And it's important, of course, whether you are objectively right or not. But the perception of unfairness has essentially the same impact on the person being treated unfairly, whether it is objectively real or not. The other reason I included the word perceived is it does bring into light one of the defenses against or the excuses for or the efforts to mitigate against the perception of unfairness, which is sometimes we're told we're wrong, that we're being conspiratorial, that we're being paranoid. In essence, we're told to run along. This notion that we've been treated unfairly is all in our heads. I think we agreed there's value in having some societal referee to identify fairness and unfairness and to let us know when we have been victimized. A Solomon, if you will, a judge, some arbiter we respect. It doesn't mean you have to like him or her, the referee or judge that is, but you do have to respect the judge. So who is that referee? What entity exists in our culture that we can trust to call balls and strikes, to put on that proverbial blindfold and carry the sword and a set of scales? If we agree fairness is a foundational attribute, and we agree that it is to be both desired because it's inherently good and because of the negative impact it has on those who believe they've been treated unjustly, then we should have no problem agreeing our society needs a dispassionate, neutral referee. But the question is, who is that? What is that? And where is that? The justice system? Do we trust the justice system to be that neutral, dispassionate arbiter? Some of us do, most of the time at least. But those of us who worked in that system and see how it is supposed to work, trust it for the most part, or at least they used to. I still do, actually. I do, because no one makes the news for not dropping the baby. Nobody makes the news when things go exactly as they're supposed to go. So yes, there have been plenty of examples where the justice system or components of the justice system have failed us. But the times the justice system was wrong are far outpaced by the times the justice system got it right. Nevertheless, there are two reasons we cannot rely solely on the justice system to be the universal arbiter of what is fair. Number one, and most importantly, most acts of unfairness are not ever going to make it through or to the justice system. That system is not designed to referee squabbles about whether a campaign ad is accurate or not. That system is not designed to monitor or referee whether a teacher graded our essay fairly, whether we really did deserve the raise last year that we didn't get. That's not the purpose of the justice system. When you've been legally wronged or victimized in a criminal way, then yes, the justice system steps in. When someone damages you or infringes on a right, courts may be an option, but the vast majority of life and its questions and concerns will never, ever be litigated in a courtroom. And because I am particularly concerned with fairness in public discourse, fairness in politics, fairness in the reconstituting of our democracy, almost none of that will ever see the inside of a courtroom. So the justice system, regrettably, cannot be that societal referee we are looking for. The fact that our justice system cannot referee or arbitrate all acts of unfairness or mete out our remedies and our rights and punish those who have been unfair does not mean the system is not worth looking at in detail. Yes, for those of you wondering, I do believe our justice system has had a rough several years. Whether you're a Democrat and watched and listened as the head of the FBI had a press conference and then later reopened an investigation into the Democrat candidate on the eve of an election, or whether you're a Republican who believes the awesome powers of the FBI and the Department of Justice and our intelligence agencies were wrongly used to target a campaign, it's been a rough several years. For the one system most of us trust, or at least we used to judge fairness. But in large measure, although not exclusively, those failings I just cited were personnel failings. They were not process failings. It is true there were some process shortcomings, no doubt. But there's a difference between a system failing us and people who work in the system failing us. They're bad cops. That doesn't mean we do away with arrest and search warrants. They're bad prosecutors. That doesn't mean we do away with the adversarial system that's existed for more than 200 years. There are jurors who don't follow their oaths, but we don't abandon the jury system because some of the people in the system don't meet our legitimate expectations. We change the people, not the process. If you believe, as I do, the justice system policies and precepts and procedures are largely fair and just, you will agree those processes and procedures are worth studying to see how they can apply to the broader community. In other words, when my wife or my friends or my colleagues will say, this isn't a courtroom, this isn't a trial, no one's on trial here. Of course, you're all right. Life isn't a courtroom. Politics isn't a courtroom. But I want you to stop and think, why do we do certain things in courtrooms? We do them, and we have done them in some instances for hundreds of years because those things are most calculated to lead to a fair result. Policies and procedures are not right or just or fair simply because we use them in the courtroom. Instead, we use them in the courtrooms because we have already concluded those policies and procedures are fair. That's why we use them. The fairness came first. The rightness came first. Then we decided to use them as often as we possibly could. Let me start with the obvious. In the courtroom, there's a fair or neutral judge who hasn't already made up his or her mind. Or even if they have, that judge possesses the humility to subrogate what they believe and allow the jury or the law to do its job. So when Supreme Court justices use the word humility in describing their approach to judging, it isn't the humility we see in other facets of life where someone says, oh, no, I'm not really a very good piano player, or sure, I scored 6 touchdowns today, but I have to give all the credit to my teammates and my coaches. That's one form of humility for sure. But this is judicial humility, and it's knowing your role. It's accepting your role. It's following your role. There's an intentionality to it. It requires discipline and effort. I'll give you a couple of examples. I have a friend on the South Carolina Supreme Court. That's the highest court in South Carolina. When he was a trial judge, there was an anti-smoking ordinance that was in front of him, in front of his court. This judge is an environmentalist. He's an outdoors guy. He's a health nut. He would live at Whole Foods if they let him. He's into granola and he drives a hybrid. I mean, he's the real deal. He's an outdoorsy health fanatic. So, of course, he's going to uphold an anti-smoking ordinance in South Carolina, right? I mean, he doesn't want people smoking cigarettes when he's eating or recreating in downtown Greenville, except that he didn't. He didn't uphold it because he didn't think the ordinance was executed and passed the right way. It had nothing to do with the merits or what he wanted to happen. I'm convinced he loved the fact that we had an anti-smoking ordinance in South Carolina. I'm equally convinced he was going to make sure even the right things are done the right way. When Neil Gorsuch was up for confirmation, he said something that I am sure had people scratching their heads. He said, and I'll paraphrase it, but he said, a judge who likes every outcome he reaches is very likely a bad judge, stretching for results he prefers rather than those the law demands. And I'll paraphrase that even further. This is what he meant. If you're a judge very long, you're going to have to issue opinions and orders that you yourself disagree with because either the law, the facts, or sometimes both dictate it. Our media loves to identify judges by which president nominated them. It's a Bush-appointed judge. It's an Obama-appointed judge. It's a Trump-appointed judge, as if the person being appointed talismanically adopts all of the beliefs and all of the perspectives of the person appointing him or her. I would really have to stop and think about who appointed the judges I used to appear before and sometimes still appear before in South Carolina. I'd have to stop and think because in my experience, who appointed them has nothing to do with the results they reach. 2 of my favorite judges in South Carolina were appointed to the trial bench by Republican presidents and then to the appellate bench by Democrat presidents. So who are they supposed to be aligned with?
For the full podcast, go to foxnewspodcast.com.